Silent Newt Gingrich, he's Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House as well, and he joins us right now. Mr. Speaker, as you look to the President's first State of the Union address tomorrow night, there in the House of Representatives, where you used to be Speaker, what does he need to say?
Well, I think what he will say is that he wants to be the president of the whole country, that things are moving in the right direction. For example, African-American unemployment, I think, is now the lowest it's been in modern times. And it's a sign that his policies are working. I think he will extend a hand to the Democrats and say, look, we can solve immigration if we're willing to work together. And I think that he will try to lay out the case for infrastructure and the case for a stronger military, and that our policies, generally speaking, have been working. I think he's coming in with a very strong hand. He did very, very well in Davos. His speech was very well accepted. I think people were shocked at how well he got along with the folks who really have been very suspicious of him. He has had a tremendous run with his tax cuts, with deregulation, with conservative judges, and the economy's been responding. So it strikes me that the president's in a pretty good position to say to the American people, look, this is working. And if we work together, we can create more jobs, have more economic growth. I think it's going to be a very positive theme.
Do you think, and this is just my assumption, so I could be way off, do you think Davos in some ways, because the same people will be writing this speech, was a trial balloon for this? Because if you notice, he brought up, I'll go back and I'll look at the TPP again if it's a better deal. He mentioned to Piers Morgan in an interview, if I retweeted something of this Islamic video and these people are white supremacists, I apologize for that. Do you sense that there might be some type of middle ground with the president, especially when his immigration plan included the path to citizenship for the DACA kids?
Look, I think there's a lot of middle ground with President Trump, as long as you understand it's his middle ground. He's not going to give up putting America first. He's not going to give up fighting for small business, fighting for deregulation, fighting for lower taxes. But I think he has learned over the last year. He's had a year now to be president. He's clearly learned a lot of lessons. There was no reason for him to know coming into office the differences between being a billionaire in business and being the president of the United States. Now he's had a year of learning, and I think, as I've always said, he's a very smart guy. He didn't get to be that wealthy by being stupid. He didn't beat 16 Republicans in the primaries by being stupid. Just think about this weekend. Hillary Clinton's on TV sadly reading out of a weird book while Donald Trump is preparing the State of the Union. That's not a world anybody on the left thought was possible. And so I think he can afford to be generous and say, let's find a way to work together.
Well, many people are going to be watching tomorrow night. We were talking about that FISA memo. If it's released, if the House Intelligence Committee does decide to release it tomorrow night, he could include that in his speech, and all the networks would have to cover it. Is there a chance that that could happen?
Oh, there's a chance. Look, I think he should at least recognize and talk about the two different investigation tracks that are underway. There's the one the left loves, which is looking into the Trump campaign. There's the other, which has been a great shock to the left, which is the level of corruption among senior FBI and among senior Justice Department in a way that, frankly, is startling. I would hope the president would have a paragraph or two, but not dwell on it. This should be a presidential speech. This should be a speech in which he is bringing together the country, talking about the progress we're making and where we're going from here. And I would hope that would be the tone he sets.
Right. Mr. Speaker, regarding the FISA memo, we've heard so many Republicans come on television and they make it sound really, really bad. Heads are going to roll. This is going to change everything. Ultimately, when the American people see that, it better live up to those expectations.
Look, I think it's entirely a function of where you are ideologically. If you're on the left, Donald Trump's guilty of something. You just don't know what it is. And you hope that Mueller will keep digging until he finds something. You don't actually care what it is because you hate Donald Trump. If you're not a Donald Trump hater and you begin to learn that the Obama administration clearly was breaking the law, Hillary Clinton clearly was breaking the law, several top people at the FBI clearly were breaking the law, the Attorney General was clearly breaking the law, you think, gee, maybe there's something here that needs to be investigated. But if you're those college students the other night who you interviewed who had no clue about reality,
right,
but were cheerful about giving you their opinion, you know, that's where you are with Hollywood. That's where you are with the New York Times. You know, the New York Times managed to clutter the speech at Davos by publishing a report about an event that did not occur. And people don't even stop and say, gee, isn't that weird?
You're talking about Robert Mueller being fired?
I suspect.
You're talking about Robert Mueller being fired?
Yeah, because he wasn't fired. They said maybe there was obstruction of justice, and they say, well, was he fired? No. But maybe Trump thought obstruction. Now, when do you have a law in America about how you thought you might do something you didn't do it? This tells you where we're at right now. And frankly, if I could for a second, my strongest advice to the president is to never be interviewed by Mueller. There are the dangers inherent in having all of those high-priced lawyers who spent a year now digging up everything they could dig up and walking in and saying, now, do you remember on January 3rd at 3 in the afternoon, a meeting you were in over a year ago? The danger he has of giving them an answer which doesn't fit their other material is enormous. And I hope his lawyers will talk him out of it.
I hear you. I understand that. But Mueller could also walk up, unless you know better, and say, if you don't want to talk to me, I could recommend the grand jury subpoena you, and you go out there without a lawyer. So that is the risk, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
Well, I think Mueller could try to get a subpoena, but I think they would fight that in court. I mean, the first question that Trump's lawyers ought to ask is simple. What is the crime you're investigating? Mueller has never identified any crime of any kind that Trump is being investigated
for. There was no parameters. They never had to identify anything. They basically said, go do whatever you want, spend whatever you want for as long as you want.
My guess is that Trump's lawyers could keep that kind of a legal maneuver tied up in court for an amazingly long time. And the first test I ought to raise is what, and Andy McCarthy's written about this brilliantly as a former U.S. prosecutor, tell me the crime.
Yeah.
Tell me what, you know, other than a fishing expedition, and remember, he was originally brought in on a foreign intelligence question, which is not criminal. And so you go and look at what Mueller's original instructions were. He has no grounds for interviewing the President of the United States unless he can tell us what's the crime. And I don't think Mueller has a crime. I think he is digging desperately to find something. And I've predicted for weeks he's going to indict somebody for something because he has too many expensive Democratic lawyers on his staff to spend a year of their life and not go out and try to find a scalp somewhere.
That's the problem. The American people has lost trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, because of a few bad apples.
And a couple of people have been indicted, but not for Russian collusion. Newt, thank you very much for joining us. We know you'll be watching the State of the Union tomorrow night.